Tension erupts between Jungkook and Jimin, and when an audio leak reveals shocking words, ARMY is left questioning their bond. Who's really at fault? Find out in this emotional story of friendship and misunderstanding. "Don't touch me," Jimin screamed, his voice slicing through the silence of the practice room that was usually filled with the sound of music and laughter. His eyes were squeezed shut, his body trembling, and his face streaked with tears. The air, once light with camaraderie, had now turned suffocating with tension. Jungkook stood across from him, his posture rigid, his face twisted with anger. His gaze was sharp, burning with fury, as though he could pierce Jimin's heart just by looking at him. "You don't know anything about me, Jimin," Jungkook shouted, his voice trembling with emotion. "You never appreciated anything I've done." Taehyung stood frozen in the corner of the room, stunned by the sight of his two closest friends about to come to blows. In all their years of practicing together, he had never seen Jungkook so enraged, and Jimin, who was usually the calmest of them all, seemed like a shell of himself, completely vulnerable. In a flash, Taehyung moved forward, stepping between the two of them, his hands gripping Jungkook's arm tightly. "Jungkook," Taehyung yelled, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Stop it. This isn't you." His grip was firm, trying to hold back the storm of anger that threatened to explode. "What's going on between you two?" The rest of the members, who had been watching in stunned silence, stood frozen. No one knew what was happening or why the atmosphere had shifted so dramatically. All they could do was watch, helpless, as Taehyung tried to keep them apart. Jungkook stared at Taehyung, his eyes filled with confusion, as though questioning whether his friend would really stop him. But eventually, Jungkook took a deep breath, his body relaxing just slightly, though the anger in his eyes hadn't fully dissipated. He backed off, but the tension between him and Jimin still hung thick in the air. Jimin, who had been quiet this whole time, wiped his face, trying to regain some semblance of control. But even as he did, the room felt impossibly heavy, filled with unspoken words that no one was brave enough to address. Taehyung stepped closer to Jimin, his voice soft yet weighed with concern. "Jimin," he called gently, his gaze full of worry. "What happened? Why is this happening?" Jimin didn't answer immediately. His eyes were distant, his expression lost in something deeper, something far more painful than anyone could have imagined. Taehyung could feel the weight of the unspoken pain in the air, something that had been building for far too long. The next day, the world was shaken by an audio leak from the practice room. The recording, crystal clear, sent waves of shock through the fandom. In it, Jimin's voice was sharp and full of frustration. "What do you even know about my struggle, Jungkook?" Jimin's words echoed through the speakers, each syllable laced with bitterness. Jungkook only made it as an idol because of his family. Without them, he'd never have gotten this far. The words cut deep, like a blade to the heart. The fans who had supported Jimin through everything were now confused and hurt. How could Jimin, the person they admired for his kindness and strength, say such a thing about Jungkook? His words seemed to crush Jungkook's hard work and dreams, leaving ARMY divided and angry. The backlash was swift. Fans flooded social media, condemning Jimin for what they saw as a betrayal. Hashtags like #JiminIsUnfair and #SupportJungkook began trending as ARMY rallied behind Jungkook, expressing their disappointment and confusion. But Jimin didn't stay silent for long. He quickly released a public apology, writing that his words had been taken out of context and that he had spoken in anger and frustration. "Please understand that I never intended to hurt anyone," Jimin wrote in his post. "What I said was something I shouldn't have said, and I deeply regret it." But the apology did little to quell the storm. Instead of offering clarity, it only deepened the suspicion. Why hadn't Jimin explained what had led to the outburst? Why had he only provided such a vague, impersonal explanation? A week later, Taehyung broke his silence. He posted a video, not to defend either Jimin or Jungkook, but to show the truth behind what had happened before the audio leak. The video was short, but it was enough. In the dim light of the practice room, Jimin sat alone in a corner, his back against the wall, wiping at his eyes. His body was hunched, and though he tried to compose himself, the tears fell uncontrollably. His voice, though shaky, could still be heard. "Why do I have to pretend to be strong?" Jimin muttered to himself, barely audible. "Everyone only sees Jungkook as the star, but they don't know who I've lost to be here." Taehyung's voice came softly from behind camera. "Jimin." His voice was filled with concern, but he didn't press any further. The camera lingered on Jimin, who was so lost in his own emotions that he didn't even notice Taehyung recording. It was in that moment that the truth began to unravel. Jimin's words weren't about belittling Jungkook. They were about his own pain, his envy, his heartbreak, and the emotional exhaustion he had carried alone. The weight of being the silent pillar for everyone else, all while feeling invisible. Jungkook wasn't silent for long either. A few hours later, he posted a story on Instagram. The words simple but heavy. "I'm angry because I know he's right, but he didn't have to hurt himself to make me shine." Jungkook's words struck a chord with everyone who had followed his journey. It wasn't about competition. It was about two friends, two brothers, each struggling with their own battles, their own doubts, and their own fears. Jungkook's frustration wasn't directed at Jimin, but at the realization that Jimin had been suffering in silence, trying to make sense of his own feelings of inadequacy. The truth was much more complicated than anyone had imagined. It wasn't about one person being right and the other wrong. It was about two friends lost in their own insecurities, both feeling unappreciated, both carrying burdens that no one saw. The practice room felt different after the truth was out. The silence was oppressive, each member of BTS walking on eggshells, unsure of what to say or do. Taehyung could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, as though the room itself was holding its breath. Jungkook and Jimin had not spoken to each other since the audio leak. They avoided eye contact whenever they crossed paths, both retreating into their own worlds, silently nursing wounds that only they truly understood. The fans, too, had become divided, their support for the group now tinged with confusion and disappointment. Taehyung sat by the window in the studio, watching the rain tap lightly against the glass. His mind was racing. He had always been the peacemaker, the one who tried to keep the balance, but this time it felt different. He could feel the distance between Jungkook and Jimin growing, not just in their interactions, but in the way they carried themselves. They were both hurting in ways that no one had expected. "Taehyung," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Yoongi, who had quietly entered the room and now stood by the door, arms crossed. "Have you talked to them?" Taehyung shook his head, his eyes fixed on the rain outside. "I can't. Not yet." His voice was quiet, as if the words themselves were heavy, weighing him down. "I don't know what to say." Yoongi nodded, his face unreadable. "You don't have to fix everything. But if you don't help them face this, they'll keep running from it. And the longer they do, the worse it gets." Taehyung let out a deep sigh. He knew Yoongi was right. He had been trying to avoid confronting the issue, hoping it would blow over, but now it was clear that they couldn't just sweep it under the rug. The pain, the misunderstandings, the jealousy, everything had to be addressed. "I'll talk to them," Taehyung said, his voice resolute. He stood up, turning away from the window. "But I need to do this on my own. They won't listen to anyone else." Yoongi gave a brief nod before leaving Taehyung to his thoughts. The tension in the room remained, but now Taehyung felt a glimmer of determination. It was time to act, before the rift between Jungkook and Jimin became something they couldn't repair. Later that evening, Taehyung found Jimin alone in the lounge area, his eyes distant as he stared at the television, though it was clear he wasn't really watching. Jimin looked up when he heard the soft footsteps approaching, but didn't say anything at first. He simply met Taehyung's gaze, his face a mask of weariness. "Jimin," Taehyung began gently, sitting down beside him. "You don't have to carry this alone." Jimin didn't respond right away. Instead, he just sighed, a long, deep exhale that seemed to release all the frustration and sadness that had built up inside him. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean it. The words I said to Jungkook. I never wanted to hurt him. I was just angry." Taehyung nodded, understanding the weight of those words. "I know, but Jimin, you can't keep this bottled up. You're not just hurting Jungkook. You're hurting yourself too. Jimin's eyes softened, but there was a sadness there that Taehyung couldn't ignore. I don't know how to fix this, Taehyung. I've been trying so hard to be strong, to keep everything together, but I'm not. I feel like I'm losing myself, and the more I try to prove I'm okay, the more I fall apart inside. Taehyung placed a reassuring hand on Jimin's shoulder. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to hide it. We're here for you always. Jimin shook his head, a small laugh escaping his lips, though it was hollow and pained. But everyone expects me to be. No one knows how much I've sacrificed to get here. I've lost so many things, people, dreams, pieces of myself, and no one sees it. All they see is the shiny version of me on stage. And it's killing me, Taehyung. I'm not sure who I am anymore. Taehyung's heart ached for his friend. Jimin had always been the bright light in the group, the one who made everyone laugh and smile, the one who took care of others. But behind that facade was someone who was deeply hurt, someone who had been carrying the weight of expectations, both his own and those of others, for far too long. You don't have to do it alone, Jimin, Taehyung said, his voice soft yet firm. You don't have to be perfect all the time, and you don't have to pretend to be okay. Jimin finally looked up at him, tears brimming in his eyes. But I don't know how to stop pretending. I don't know how to let go of the pressure. You start by being honest, Taehyung replied, his words clear and filled with conviction. With Jungkook, with yourself, and with us. We're all here for you, Jimin. We always will be. The next day, Taehyung approached Jungkook in the practice room. Jungkook was alone, hitting the punching bag with all his strength, his face tight with frustration. The sound of his fists hitting the bag echoed through the room, a rhythmic beat of anger and pain. Jungkook, Taehyung called out softly. Jungkook stopped mid-punch, breathing heavily, his face flushed from exertion. He turned to look at Taehyung, his eyes filled with a mix of exhaustion and something else, something deeper. I know you're mad, Taehyung said, stepping closer. But this isn't just about Jimin. It's about both of you. You've both been hurting, but neither of you has said anything. Jungkook's jaw clenched, but he didn't respond right away. He simply stared at Taehyung, as though weighing his next words. I'm not mad at Jimin, Jungkook finally said, his voice low. I'm mad at myself, because I know he's right, and I don't know how to fix it. Taehyung stepped forward, placing a hand on Jungkook's shoulder. Jungkook, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about understanding. You've both been carrying so much, and you've been too scared to talk about it. Jungkook let out a breath, his shoulders sagging as if a heavy weight had been lifted, even if just for a moment. I don't know how to fix this, Taehyung. I don't know if we can go back to how things were. You don't have to fix everything right now, Taehyung said, his voice gentle but firm. But you do need to talk to each other. Open up. Don't let this silence grow any longer. You're both breaking, and if you don't talk, you'll lose each other. Jungkook looked at Taehyung for a long moment, his eyes searching, conflicted. Then, slowly he nodded. I'll try. I don't know what will happen, but I'll try. The studio was unusually quiet. N.O. beats thumping from the speakers. No humming vocals as placeholders for melodies. No laughter echoing from the corners where they usually joked around during breaks. Just silence and the low hum of the fluorescent lights above. Jungkook stood at the center of the practice room, staring at the full-length mirror in front of him. He looked at his reflection, but it felt like he was staring at someone else entirely, someone worn down by more than just rehearsals. His hoodie clung damp to his back, soaked with sweat from hours of dancing in solitude. His breathing was steady now, but his thoughts weren't. Behind him, the door creaked open. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. There was a certain rhythm to Jimin's footsteps, measured, soft, careful. But now, they were hesitant. Like someone walking into a room full of memories they weren't sure they were ready to relive. Jimin didn't say anything at first. Neither did Jungkook. The silence between them wasn't the kind that begged to be broken. It was the kind that lingered, waiting to see who would have the courage to speak first. Finally, Jimin's voice cracked through the air, quiet, fragile. Do you remember when we used to stay up all night here? He asked, staring down at the floor rather than at Jungkook. Practicing until our legs gave out, laughing at stupid inside jokes no one else would understand. Jungkook's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. Jimin took another step forward. Back then, we didn't think about who was better. We were just kids with big dreams. That was enough. Jungkook's eyes closed briefly. He could still remember those nights. How they used to fall asleep on the floor with bottles of banana milk beside them, their phones full of blurry rehearsal clips and goofy selfies. Back then, the only thing they competed for was who could hold a plank the longest. But things changed. Jimin continued, more to himself now. We got bigger. The stage got brighter. And somewhere along the way, I started measuring myself against you. His voice wavered on the last word. And when Jungkook finally turned to face him, he saw it. The truth behind the mask. Jimin looked exhausted, not physically, but emotionally, like someone who'd been fighting a silent war for too long. I hated myself for it, Jimin confessed. For being jealous, for resenting your success, even though you worked so hard for it. But I hated feeling invisible even more. You were never invisible, Jungkook replied, his voice hoarse. Not to me. Jimin laughed bitterly. Maybe not at first, but I watched as more and more people saw you as the golden boy. And the more they praised you, the more I wondered what I was even doing here. He paused, then met Jungkook's eyes. When I said those things that day, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to hurt myself. I wanted someone to see how broken I was inside. And you were the only one who looked at me long enough to notice. Jungkook took a slow step forward. You think I don't know what that feels like? He said, the hurt in his voice rising. You think I don't have days where I feel like I don't belong? Just because people see me as this perfect version of an idol doesn't mean I actually feel that way. Jimin's eyes widened slightly. I pushed myself until I couldn't breathe, not because I wanted to be the best, but because I was terrified that if I stopped, I'd disappear, that I'd let everyone down, that I'd let you down. The confession hung between them like raw lightning, sudden, vulnerable, and impossible to ignore. They stood there for a long time, just staring at each other. The silence this time didn't feel heavy. It felt like a breath being held, waiting to be released. I'm sorry, Jimin finally said, for everything, for letting my hurt turn into something that made you feel small. And I'm sorry too, Jungkook replied, voice soft, for not noticing sooner how much you were carrying. I should have seen it. I should have said something. There were no hugs, no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just two people facing the wreckage of what they'd almost lost and trying to rebuild something real from it. That night, the group gathered for a late dinner in Namjoon's place. No one brought up the argument. No one had to. The tension was still there, yes, but so was the willingness to move past it. Yoongi cracked a joke. Hoseok threw a cushion at him in response. Jin rolled his eyes and started lecturing them about the importance of mature conflict resolution, only for Taehyung to stuff a rice ball in his mouth mid-sentence. And when Jimin and Jungkook caught each other's eyes across the table, they both smiled, just faintly, but it was enough. The second audio clip spread like wildfire. Posted anonymously on a hidden forum, it was only 15 seconds long, but in the world of idols, 15 seconds could burn down years of trust. Jimin's voice crackled through the recording, raw and bitter. Sometimes I wish I'd never joined this group. Maybe then I'd still have myself. The backlash was immediate and unforgiving. Fans, already reeling from the first leak, now turned hostile. Hashtags trended globally. Accusations of ingratitude flooded his comments. Armies clashed with each other, some defending Jimin's pain, others calling for accountability. Big Hit remained silent, issuing only a vague statement. We are reviewing the authenticity of the recording. Inside the dorm, silence returned, but now it wasn't awkward. It was terrifying. Jimin didn't leave his room for 3 days. Food went untouched. Messages unopened. His phone buzzed nonstop, but none of it reached him. Not even the soft knocks from Taehyung, who sat outside his door night after night, whispering, "Hyung, come out. Please." Meanwhile, Jungkook became obsessed with the audio's origin. He spent hours scouring forums, profiles, timestamps. His frustration grew with every unanswered thread. "I don't think it's recent," Jungkook muttered one night, scrolling through posts. He sounded younger. "Tired, yeah. But not like now. Yoongi looked up from across the table. You think someone saved it all this time just to drop it now? Jungkook nodded. Feels timed. Like they were waiting for us to break. On the fourth night, Jimin finally emerged. His face was pale, eyes swollen, but his posture held a fragile resolve. He didn't say anything as he walked into the living room. Just sat down, placed his phone on the table, and looked at the others, one by one. I said that, he began, 2 years ago, after the Map of the Soul tour was canceled. I just lost someone I was supposed to meet that week. He paused, breathing through the weight. I was grieving, burnout, and no one knew. I didn't let anyone know. That recording was from a therapy session I had in the studio right before practice. I didn't know it was being saved. The room stayed quiet. Jungkook's fists clenched. Why didn't you tell us any of this? He asked, not accusing, just hurt. Jimin looked at him, voice trembling. Because I didn't think I was allowed to be the one who breaks down. In the days that followed, something shifted. The group stopped rehearsing. No schedules, no cameras. Just quiet healing. They stayed inside, cooked meals together, played old games, watched movies half asleep. Jimin didn't smile much, but when he did, it was real. Jungkook started speaking more. Less guarded, softer, but beneath it all, one question hung in the air like smoke. Who leaked the audio? Then, the twist came. Taehyung found it, a hidden folder on one of the old shared studio drives. Titled simply, Drafts, JM, dozens of files. Some cut vocals, some voice memos, all private, all untouched since early 2023. And at the bottom, the full, unedited audio. Jimin's voice, uninterrupted. The words that followed the leaked quote shattered every doubt. But I also know I'm still here because of them, because of this group. Even if I've lost myself, they're the only part of me I still trust. They knew now. The audio leak wasn't random. It was targeted, a calculated wound made to look like an accident. With the full recording recovered, the context vindicated Jimin. But the damage had been done, and trust, within the group and beyond, was still fragile. Taehyung brought the drive to management. The investigation began quietly, but not without consequences. Security protocols were tightened. Access logs combed through. The list of suspects narrowed. Only a few had access to that folder, including one name that froze them all, a former staff member. A vocal engineer. Quiet, polite, forgettable. Let go months ago during restructuring. His last login? 2 weeks before the first leak. While the company pursued legal action behind closed doors, the group turned inward. They met in the studio again. Not to rehearse, but to talk. It's not just about Jimin, Namjoon said. It's about all of us. How close we came to falling apart. Jungkook nodded. I said I'd try to understand, to forgive. But I also need to forgive myself for not seeing him sooner. Jimin looked down, voice barely audible. I need to stop pretending I'm okay, just to make everyone else feel better. Yoongi, quietly scribbling lyrics in his notebook, murmured, that's where the next song begins. They began writing together again. Not for a comeback. Not yet. Just as 7 people who once shared a dream. The song that emerged was unlike anything they'd done before. Stripped back. Honest. No choreography. No costumes. Just voices. Just truth. Still Here was recorded over 4 long nights. The lyrics bore scars. The chorus was soft and raw. Even when I doubted the light / you held it for me. They didn't tell anyone. No teasers. No promo. They just posted it midnight. A surprise drop. The response was staggering. Not because of the surprise, but because of the heart. Fans heard it. The pain, the healing, the realness. Streams soared. Comments poured in. And somewhere amid all the noise, silence returned. Not the heavy kind, but the healing kind. Jimin posted his first personal message in weeks. I said something I wish I hadn't. But I also said something I meant, that I've been angry, tired, and scared. But I'm still here, because of all of you. Thank you. It began with a click. Taehyung sat alone in the dorm's shared workspace. The only sound, the faint buzz of the computer fan. His hand hovered over the mouse. The mysterious file opened in a secure offline viewer. Untold_truth.mp4. He hesitated. Not because he was afraid of what was in it, but because part of him already knew the video flickered to life. Static, then a familiar view. Their old practice room, dimly lit, a hidden camera angle from the corner of the ceiling. No te me stamp. Just raw, grainy footage that, at first, it looked like nothing. Jimin alone, sitting on the floor. He wasn't crying, just still. Too still. Then a voice behind the camera, unmistakable. I told you if you can't deliver something real, they'll replace you. It wasn't one of them. It wasn't even someone Taehyung recognized clearly. The figure stood in the shadows, blurred and off-frame. But the voice was cold, calculated. Jimin looked up in the video, jaw clenched. You think I don't know that? Then give them what they want. Break if you have to. Just make sure it's beautiful. Taehyung's hand shook as he paused the footage. His stomach turned. This wasn't just about a leak. This was emotional manipulation. Exploitation. Someone inside the system, likely once close to them, had known what Jimin was going through and had used it, pushed it, framed it, and recorded it. When he showed the others, the room went silent. No outbursts, just a bone-deep chill that settled over everyone like fog. Jungkook stood first. We have to go public. Namjoon, calm but firm, nodded. We control the story now. They released a statement that night. Simple, undeniable. IT included stills from the footage, select quotes, and a unified message. This isn't just about protecting Jimin. It's about protecting every artist who's ever been told to suffer quietly, beautifully, and alone. The response was explosive. Shock, outrage, solidarity. Fans across the world rallied in support. Trending tags like hashtag protect Jimin, hashtag artists are not products, and hashtag BTS untold truths. But more than the noise, something else happened. A cultural shift. Other idols began speaking out. Stories surfaced, small ones, heartbreaking ones, brave ones. Behind the glitter and choreo were real humans, wounded by the same unseen hands. And BTS, who had always walked the tightrope between global stars and vulnerable young men, had now torn the curtain down completely. 1 week later, they held a live broadcast. All 7 members. No stylists, no stage, just them in a circle. Jimin spoke first. Voice steady, clear. I don't want to be pitied, he said. I just want to be understood. Jungkook reached across and gripped his hand, just briefly. And then Taehyung, with that quiet conviction in his voice, added, We started this group with the dream to share music, not just smiles. This is part of that music too. Our silence ends here. Late at night, the studio. Empty now. Jimin walks in alone again. But this time, he isn't lost. He puts on his headphones, opens a new voice memo, and hits record. Diary, April 28th. Today, I felt the weight lift. Not completely, but enough to breathe. He exhales. Then, softly, sings a line. Even when I broke, you stayed. A new melody is born. Not perfect, but real. And that, finally, is enough. End of season 1.